Welcome to a little bit of Common Crazy. Today I'm excited to share some new fall inspiration with you. If that sounds great, hang tight and let's get into it. For this project, I have some pumpkins. I think these are darling, but they definitely need a little love, and a can of copper spray paint. To start off with, I'm just kind of pushing up their tendrils a little bit more so that they will stick out and not get lost in the pumpkin. You might recognize these. These were actually in the Target dollar spot a couple years ago. So I took them outside and I gave them a good spray of the spray paint in this copper color. I'm loving copper for fall because it has a little bit more of that warm metal look to it. Once that had dried, I went ahead and I painted the stem and the tendrils in black. That is what I love about paint. It really can change something. So if you happen to have something lying around and you're not sure if you're loving it anymore, try adding some paint to it and see if you can refall in love with it like I have refallen in love with these pumpkins. I could not resist the mini little rolling pin and the mini cutting board from Hobby Lobby. The rolling pin comes in a pack of 3, and I used a coupon for that. And then this cutting board, of course, is sold with their fall section. So using some washi tape, I taped around the cutting board all the way around so that I could paint a stripe. I'm gonna be doing like a grain sack striping around this. And I'm using Waverly's chalk paint and moss. I think it's such a beautiful sagey color, and I love it not only for fall, but actually for all year. So whatever color kind of speaks to you is the color that I would go for something like this. If you wanna go really into traditional fall, if you wanna go more for something that you can use all year, for me, this is absolutely something I can use all year, but I honestly think that these would make really great gifts just for, I'm thinking of you gifts, or Christmas is not too far around the corner. If you're already starting to start thinking of some ideas, it would make really great Christmas gifts as well. Once that first stripe had completely dried, I did go all the way around and I did do 2 coats. I'm now taping off to do the smaller 2 lines, or the smaller 2, yeah, they're called lines. So I am actually covering up that original line first. This is where I'm starting. And I slightly just go over, and that is giving me the guide to give my second line. So you guys, it's not rocket science here. Basically tape off where you want your lines. Now, what I would suggest is if you want this to be perfect and you don't want to have any sort of bleed under and you're nervous about that, you could go down with like a Mod Podge first because it's clear. But if you're not too worried about it being perfect, then just go in straight with the paint. I had a little bit of bleed through on my second 2 lines. The first one was fine, but the second 2 I did go in with a Q-tip and clean up afterwards a little bit. I wasn't too worried, and I'm definitely not standing on top of this cutting board because I didn't want to mess up the final finish that was already on it. I wanted to make sure that this was sealed and protected, so I'm just using some clear wax to do that. I just wipe it on with a lint-free cloth and then wipe off the excess. Super simple and easy. With the rolling pin, I went in with the exact same Waverly chalk paint and moss and painted just the handles this time. Again, love this color, and I wanted the rolling pin and the cutting board to coordinate. After that, I used my Cricut in order to cut out apple pie. Some of you guys might come for me in the comments, but I don't like pumpkin pie, and I didn't want to pretend. So if you like pumpkin pie, then you by all means could do pumpkin pie. You could put on homemade. You might put on made with love. There are so many different things that you could put on here. You could use stickers. You could use a Sharpie. You don't have to use a Cricut to do this, just showing you one idea. I went ahead and waxed the main part of the rolling pin and then sanded the handles before I went in and waxed that because I did want to distress those. After that, this little duo was done, and I think it is a cute little addition to my kitchen decor. If you have been around, you know that I love using old cabinet doors for a base for a sign, especially at $2 a pop. And the cost of wood nowadays, this is a great alternative. I actually used this door for a previous project on the back side, so it's already been cleaned and sanded, and now I'm using the front side of it. So I've already taped off the edges because I don't want to get any paint on those. I picked this pumpkin up from Dollar Tree, and it has this tiny little hole that's not part of the design. I'm just using a little piece of tape to cover that up so I don't get any paint when I go in to spray paint that. So here I'm using Gorilla Spray Adhesive. This is so that it will stay secure while I'm using the spray paint. I don't want it moving around, but this is a repositionable adhesive, so it won't also stay stuck, I can just peel it straight off once I'm done with the spray paint. But it will help so that I don't get paint underneath the pumpkin and get that bleed through look that I'm trying to avoid. You'll notice as I'm spraying that I'm not getting a super full coverage with the paint. I actually can still see the wood grain, and that was the look that I wanted to go for. I also love the blue for this, but of course you could choose any color that you want. But I thought the blue was a great complementary color to orange for fall, but I'm also putting this out on my back porch, and blue is a very main staple color on my back porch, so it complements my porch beautifully. After the paint dried, I went ahead and pulled off the pumpkin and the tape to reveal how simple yet beautiful this sign turned out. If you're curious how like my porch looks or anything like that, make sure you're following me on Instagram. That's the place where I like to share a little bit more behind the scenes. It's a little bit of common crazy over there just like it is here. This simple little DIY all started with another thrift store find. I absolutely love this little basket that I found at the thrift store, but it did have, the handle was broken, and so instead of like trying to fix it because it didn't quite come together, I went ahead and just snipped it right off. After that, I have this pick. I picked it up at Walmart. It was just under $1, and it's, again, instead of stressing about trying to take my wire cutters and getting through all the different layers, I just bent it and used a pair of pliers to just make sure that it was a nice tight bend. Plus it gives me a little bit more surface area when I go to hot glue this in a little bit. So now I'm going to attempt to do a bow. I will let you know right now, I am not a bow expert. If you want to see somebody that can do a fantastic bow, then make sure that you're checking out like Olivia from Olivia Romantic Homes or Tracy from Country Charm by Tracy. I simply started with a tiny little loop in the center. I pinched that with my finger and thumb, and then I started the larger loops. Every time I go between my finger and my thumb, I do a little twist underneath so that the ribbon is always facing the right way with the loop. And I did a total of 3 loops on each side. Again, I'm telling you, check out somebody else. I'm not a bow expert, and I'm pretty sure somebody will probably make some sort of comment about my bow in the comments, because normally that does happen. And you guys, I'm okay with that because I know it's not the most perfect bow, but I still like it, so we're good. I'm using a chenille stem in order to secure everything together. I do go ahead and I clip off one side of my tail, but again, not an expert, so I have to cut a separate piece to do the second side of my tail, and I just hot glue that on. Again, nobody's gonna see it, and it looks good in the end, at least in my humble opinion, so I'm okay with it. And I just use that same chenille stem in order to twist that right onto the little basket shovel. After that, I go ahead and I mess with my bow, I fluff it up, I get it where I want it, and then it's time to go ahead and cut my little dovetail ends. And all I do is I fold my ribbon in half, I cut from the outside corner up towards the center to get those dovetail ends, and my bow is done. I decided to go ahead and fluff up the pick just a little bit, so I took 3 strands of raffia and I cut them in half. And then I went ahead and I wrapped them around that same little pick area that I bent and tied them into a knot. In order to secure that knot, I did do a little dab of hot glue because I didn't want it to come untied. I did trim the end of that raffia so that it would match up with the end of the pick. And then I went ahead and I hot glued that bent area, put a little hot glue on that bent area and just stuck it right into that shovel, and then this was done, and I think it is really pretty for fall. Make sure you check out the playlist if you are looking for some more fall inspiration. Thank you so much for stopping by today. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.